You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody. Returning to Katahdin, an Appalachian Trail dream. Have you ever dreamt of hiking the AT? Bruce Matson did, so we're going to follow him every step of the way. Hello, and thanks for dropping in again to listen to Bruce's adventures in Returning to Katahdin, an Appalachian Trail dream, sponsored by Trailtopia. We bring up the quarter of a century today with episode number 25 and Bruce's 8th week on the trail. It's kind of hard to believe that he's been out there for nearly 2 months, but as people always discover when they go on a long distance trail, the time just passes. You think you have a long time to address all the thoughts going around in your mind, and then you're in Maine. Bruce has still got a long way to go to get to Maine, but he's definitely putting in the miles and making his way back to Katahdin. Before we get to Bruce, though, let's have a spot of dinner. Do you remember those cold, wet evenings on the trail when you pitched up at a shelter and there was nothing you would have rather had than a beautiful, hot, home-cooked meal? Well, apart from actually going home, you could try out one of the delicious meals from Trailtopia. Why not dig into their spectacular jambalaya with its authentic Creole flavour? Or how about their beef stew, which is loaded with beef, potatoes, carrots, mushrooms, corn, green beans and green bell pepper in a fantastic beef gravy. Go on, try them. Trust me, you'll love them. Trailtopia, the best of home cooking away from home. As we've been following him, every week we've had a new indication that spring was just around the corner, and every week we get another winter blast. I know that Bruce was looking forward to hiking in the snow, but really, this is now nearly the end of April. Is there ever going to be any respite? We're going to find out now, with the miles on his legs and the pounds falling away. Here's Bruce.
Yes, sir.
Hey Bruce, how are you doing?
I'm doing really well.
Cool. You've just so listeners know, Bruce has just texted me. He's available to speak. So I'm wondering where you are. I'm looking at the map right now. So where are you up to?
So probably mile, 595, something like that, 96.
Wow.
I'm heading for Jenny Nod shelter at 6:03.
Okay.
And
just finding
having a very, very, very nice day after a very, very ugly day yesterday.
Yes. Bruce sent me a text yesterday with a picture. He said, so spring has sprung and it was snowy again. So what happened there? So the spring went away, did it?
This is the third time in 3-4 weeks that we've had this teaser of spring where we got 1 or 2 or even 3 days of sunny, warm weather. And I think if the listeners actually went back and listened to, like when I was coming into Hot Springs, or I was coming to Irwin one of those times, I said, I think the spring's coming. And then a day later, we have always had this brutal, cold, windy, wet weather. And this is the third time this has happened, because when we hiked through Atkins just a couple days ago, stopped at the barn,
yeah.
It was shorts and T-shirt weather and over 70 degrees. And we had one more decent day. And then we had a brutally rainy, windy, thundery day on Sunday, 2 inches of rain, everything's flooding. And then yesterday, it turned colder, so the precipitation was all in the form of snow.
Cool, yeah.
And never got over 30 degrees. So it was 2 really tough days.
I've got to say, you seem to definitely be going through it more than most people I hear in those early days. I suppose we should counter that a little bit because you started so early, and we know you started so early. And I was just saying to Diane today that this time 4 years ago, I was just coming out of the Smokies today, and I had some snow in the Smokies. But after this time, my weather improved dramatically. So hopefully yours are going to improve as well, because you've had a real tough time of it, haven't you?
Yeah, I think it's going to improve. I think this is just one of those years that the winter has lingered. We're April 17th, and hopefully our daughter Brooke is listening. Happy birthday, Brooke.
Oh,
Brooke
happy
turns
birthday,
29.
Brooke. Oh, wow.
Brooke
I'm
turns
sure
29 today.
she'll be happy for that, by the way. Nice one, Bruce.
Happy birthday. But yeah, it's April 17th. I hope everyone got their taxes in. But it really has lingered. But today it's 45, sunny, a beautiful hiking day, and we're supposed to have 2-3 more in a row that are going to be quite nice. So hopefully it's behind us.
I want to ask you, in retrospect, had you known the weather was going to be like this, would you have put off the start, or are you kind of looking back now thinking, man, I got through that. That was great.
Well, it's so hard to do that. We talked a lot before I left, and that I actually wanted the challenge of winter hiking. I wanted the challenge of winter camping. But I have to tell you, it was a dose above that which I had hoped for. Now that it's over, there's a lot of us, and we're learning more and more as we meet more people. There's a lot of people that left the trail.
I'm sure.
It has chased a lot of people away. But those of us who kind of went through the Smokies and some of these other adventures together, we kind of sit around going, well, we kind of this badge of honor now. It's like maybe someday people say, wow, you were a 2018 early through hiker. That's an accomplishment. So yeah. I hope that's it, because it has been hard. It's been rewarding. It's been very hard at times.
Yeah.
And so now that we're through it, and I didn't have any terrible consequences, I go back, as we said before, to the planning and having the right gear.
Sure.
Because I'll tell you, even some of my friends out here who have come through it with me, a couple of them will tell you honestly that they still don't have much feeling at the tips of their fingers, the tips of their toes, and
wow.
They've got remnants of frostbite. A few of them had hypothermia. So it has been, I'm sure there's rougher years, and people have been through a lot of rough times, but it was a pretty tough year.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, it really does sound it. And funnily enough, that fits very neatly into a question that I wanted to ask you. It's from a listener, Kyle Welshans, and he wrote, preparing for this hike, if your daughters ever came and asked you to either help prepare for or go on the AT with them years from now, would you ever consider hiking the AT a second time with them?
Sure. I mean, to predict that today, I am, went through a lot, and it's been hard. And one thing I say to people, and maybe I want to make sure it's clear to everybody, every day is hard for me. It's not so hard that I'm not having fun and I want to quit, but it's every day is the degree of hard, and some really, really hard. Yeah. That said, it would be really fun if one of my daughters wanted to do it. The only caveat to that would be, as much as I'll get to 600 miles today. Yeah. I've got a long way to go. And it's possible. There were a couple people that I followed years ago, people I picked up on in Virginia and took them into town and bought them dinner to pick their brain about hiking, and people who had it together succeeded. But the one thing I noticed that resonated with me, and I worry about a little bit, was as great as the time as it was for them, towards the end, they just said they wanted it to be over. Yeah. That it was just such a long time to be out there. So that's my caveat, is nothing's going to replace actually being here for another 3 months or so before I could ever answer that question.
Sure,
now, that said, if they wanted to do it, I would love to do some of it, and certainly maybe the whole thing. But until you get through it all, I don't think you really can answer that question.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. And funnily enough, you saying that, for most people, and the expression is, it's the journey. And it was the journey for me. But for the last 500 yards, last 500 miles, it was definitely the destination. I was hanging out there for the destination. I'd had enough by the end, and I was exhausted.
Yeah.
Physically,
I've heard that.
My wife refers to me as having been broken by it, but when I got back, I was absolutely exhausted, and I was glad it was over. So when I touched that sign, it was relief and excitement and adrenaline, but really the main thing was relief that I hadn't died. I hadn't injured myself badly, and I got through it. But yeah, I was definitely wanting the destination, no question about it. Now, the other day, I mentioned to you you're going to love the ridge walking up to Chestnut Knob Shelter. You sent me a picture of that as well. It was foggy, and you couldn't see the beautiful view from there. But did you enjoy the walk up there, though?
Yes, I could tell. It's funny. The picture I sent you was a complete cloud.
Yes,
but about half a mile south of there, you can see, as you know, on both sides of the ridge.
Yeah.
And while it was misty and rainy, I could see enough both left and right to know how magnificent that view must be.
Yeah.
It's a lovely walk because you're going through meadow for about a mile, and you get up to the shelter. Lovely walk. I certainly think you were spot on, and I just wish I had enjoyed it on a different day. So another iconic spot that I didn't get to enjoy to the fullest, but I'm still realized you get some on the right days and some
Absolutely.
You won't get on the right days.
That's become a real thing for me when I do presentations on the trail. When I talk about the trail in presentations, it's always one of my takeaways is enjoy the views while they're there. They may not come, they may not be there, but when they're there, you've really got to enjoy them, and that translates to life in itself, doesn't it? Take your opportunities while you can.
No question. It kind of goes to the hike itself and taking these opportunities. So couldn't agree more.
Now, I seem to remember, now you can tell me I'm wrong, but I think I might be right on this. After Chestnut Knob Shelter, you go down quite a bit, but then you start hiking along that ridge. There's a whole ridge all the way around Burke's Garden or God's Thumbprint, isn't there? So you have some real nice ridge walking for the next few days, or you had quite a bit of ridge walking, didn't you? Yeah. That was great, wasn't it? That was
completely correct. Yesterday, sort of coming from that Chestnut Knob area and coming into Bland, I said to guys I was hiking with, I said, on a relative basis, that may have been the easiest day of hiking we've ever had.
Yeah.
It was hard to believe how you look on the map and it shows something that's pretty flat. There actually was an old forest road that was incredibly flat for 2 miles, and it was the most flat. But it is pleasant, as you know, to have that easy, earthen, flat. And then, as you say, other than climbing out of Bland this morning, which is a pretty steep climb, 30 minutes, once again, been very, very pleasant ridge walking and a beautiful day. And while I got to look through the trees, at least without leaves, I can still see the Virginia farmlands and the mountains in the distance on both my left and my right. So it's a really pleasant hiking day today. And it's supposed to be sunny all day, and it's going to be at least 50 at the end of the day. So I think we'll probably be able to tent and have a little social time at the shelter tonight.
And so the shelter you're heading for is a Jenny Knob shelter. Yeah, I've got it about $5.99 or probably more now because there's a few more miles on the trail. And then in about 2 days' time, you're going to be getting into Pearisburg. I can tell you that the hike down from the top of that mountain, it's called Angel's Rest, Pearisburg Mountain, down into Pearisburg itself is fierce. It's the fiercest downhill I recall on the trail in those first
really?
1,000 miles. Yeah, it was endless as well. It just went on and on. It was one of those I thought to myself, oh my gosh, I would hate to be coming up the other way. So it just seems to go on forever and ever and ever. It's quite tough on the knees going down. So watch out for that.
So it must be particularly steep. So that is where you hurt yourself. So. So far, so good. So I'll take it easy going into Pearisburg. I'm going to take a 0 there, so take my time to get there and rest up.
I know, and one of our listeners, Eliza, is there with her folks, her parents, and she and they want to buy you a beer. So happy days. And Bruce is you're going to connect with. Hopefully, you're going to connect with them on Saturday with a bit of luck. And
yep. Now you gave me their number, and I'll text them, and I'll connect with them on Saturday.
Have you heard from other listeners yourself?
Yeah, I have actually. And as predicted, as I get a little closer to, Richmond, there's I had, in fact, 2 days after Pearisburg, a friend, really he's a friend of a friend, who's a Triple Crowner.
Oh, wow.
He reached out, and looks like I'll be at his home for dinner in the evening Tuesday, and then get to Roanoke. There's some plans going on. We've been, the law firm's got an office in Roanoke, and got a friend there, and Cheryl's coming out. So I have had more, and just some other listeners who have just said, when are you going to be near here? So probably I've had 6 or 7 either friends or listeners in the last week start to reach out. So
that's lovely.
It's fun, and so far, it's going to be fun. I don't want to have a 4-mile day. I want to keep moving, but it'll be fun to visit with people.
So you're having a ticker tape parade, 1,500 miles from the end. Good idea. Oh dear. All right, mate. Well, look, great to catch up with you. You're sounding good, and get to nearly 600 miles. That is just extraordinary. So following along with you all the way. Keep sending the pictures, and we'll wish you well.
All right. Very good, Steve. You be good, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, buddy. Take it easy. Bye.
All right. Cheers.
He certainly had his share of weather, hasn't he? I thought it was quite disturbing that several hikers still can't feel their toes and their fingers. Just goes to show how valuable Bruce's winter supplement was. It helped keep him going, no doubt about that. While I remember, thanks for the question, Carl Welshans. Let me have your address and I'll get a couple of Trailtopia meals heading your way. And also, while I remember, I wanted to read out a couple of 5-star reviews that the show got recently. Levitz Palooza appears to have totally taken leave of his or her senses. I used to find myself excited for the weekend. Now I can't wait for it to end, because that means it's Monday, all capitals, and a new episode. Then a little heart emoji. Now there is a fan. Thanks, Lebitz Palooza. Eliza Newland calls it a great podcast. Starting with, I love this podcast, she concludes with, and now I get to follow RTK as he heads north. What an absolute pleasure. Thanks, Eliza. Nice to have you with us. 3 or 4 days after our first chat, I caught up again with Bruce in Pearisburg. If you recall from our first conversation, I'd mentioned the crippling downhill into the town from my hike in 2014. Some of you must have frowned at that, as I was, of course, referring to the dreadful hike down into Port Clinton, and he still had that to come. I had to break it to Bruce. Here he is. And we're back on with Bruce. It's Saturday morning. Hi, Bruce. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks.
Good. You know, my wife commented the other day how chirpy you sound these days. When you first started, you were obviously struggling with the weather and so on, but you didn't sound desperately happy all the time. But you sound, last couple of weeks, you sounded so in the zone right now, and you sound it again this morning. So I'm very pleased.
Yeah, I think that's probably good to fair. The early days, no matter how much preparation you do, and we've laughed about that, you don't really know what it's going to be like. You don't really know how you're going to react. And we got hit harder than I expected to get hit.
Yeah.
So, I was really, I kind of joke about this, but I really spend all day just trying to get through the day and manage some of the challenges, particularly, of course, weather. I don't, hopefully it's not this sense of hubris or something, but I do think that having, however you want to measure it, getting to Damascus, finishing 500 miles, now 600 miles, I do think there's a level of confidence that allows you to spend a little bit more time on the broader experience and a little less time just getting, the basic tasks done. So I do have a little bit of this relaxed comfort and confidence, and I think that probably shows up in my voice now because
very clear.
Again, it's one thing to say we're gonna go do Georgia, and that's 69 miles. It's another thing to say we're past the quarter way, and again, a lot to go. But I do think I think it reflects that sort of confidence and also enthusiasm.
Yeah, well, I've got to tell you, I know now that you're in Pearisburg. Okay, and I was feeling pretty good by now, but it was right up that mountain, Peters Mountain, that a bloody dog bit me and forced me off the trail.
Oh,
I mean,
really? That's where
yeah,
you
I'm
got bit.
exactly there. So I'm sure it won't happen to you because let's face it was a hiker's dog. But one of those things, stuff comes up, and as you say, you have to manage those situations as they come up, don't you?
Oh, no question. And you can't assume. Again, I've been pretty healthy from a injury standpoint, but you just never know when you just step on something. One guy I hiked with the last couple of days, he's similar age, almost exactly the same age. He's 2 months older.
Right.
He's accounting professional, very similar backgrounds, and he's been doing great. And he just stepped on a rock in the Grayson Highlands and really injured the bottom of his foot. And he had, real hiking shoes on, not trail runners or something. So,
Yeah.
and he had to take a couple of days off and hiked with him day before yesterday. And it was still really sensitive. So you just never know when something like that happens. I slip on a route and go down and twist something. So I do think, you do have to manage it every day.
Yeah, to be honest, though, I think that's in its own way, although it's not very good for the person themselves, it's the wonderful serendipity of the trail, isn't it? You just do not know what's going to happen literally in the next 30 seconds. So it's that unknown, which I like. It's great when you're going along fine. It's great when you don't have to look down for rocks. But I can tell you, I fell over 46 times. About half of those were on the flat. So I don't know how that happened. So, you just have to watch your footing all the time, don't you?
And no question. I'm only up to 6 falls, but
oh, good.
I completely know what you mean, and it could be, it even could be during a town visit. You step in a hole or something. So
absolutely.
But I'm really thankful so far that haven't had anything too major.
All right, and I did mention, you're in Pearisburg. You're over 630 miles, which is about nearly 30% of the way through. So you're moving up these percentages all the time. And the other day, when I was we were talking to you which will be on the first part of this show, we talked about the downhill, and I said I think I said the downhill into Pearisburg, but I was thinking about the downhill into Port Clinton. But then, and you still got that to come. But then I looked at the downhill into Pearisburg today on the map, and that's pretty steep as well, isn't it?
It is. It is. I was thinking about your comment when I was doing it, and I couldn't decide if I agreed with you. Maybe you were thinking of Port Clinton.
I was.
Nonetheless, it was. I would say you break down. It's 1,600 feet. You come down into Pearisburg, so it's a pretty long descent.
Yeah.
And I had your thoughts on my mind. I would have, sort of the first maybe half of that, maybe third of that, was unusually steep and somewhat rocky. So. Yeah. Steep downhill is probably the thing I dislike the most because it puts the most pressure on your knees. It kind of shoves your toes up against your toe box. Yeah. And so that was pretty steep coming right off of
Trust me, Bruce. The one I was remembering, Port Clinton, is a nightmare. Yeah. Absolute nightmare. But you'll be pleased when you get down there.
We'll talk about that.
Yeah. Exactly. Now we did have a message, and I knew this would happen. The other day we had a bit of not difficulty, but we were having a discussion about how to pronounce Unaka Mountain or Unaka Mountain. A guy called John Blackwell, who's apparently a local in the area, he emailed me to tell me that Unaka or Unaka Mountain should more correctly be pronounced Unaka. YOU-NAY-KUH. So Unaka Mountain. It was bothering him, but he did say keep up the awesome work. So I think he was still pretty happy with the show.
Well, good. Most of those people on the internet just are looking to, sort of criticize somebody. Yes. So he seemed to have some good spirit about it.
He did, yeah. So you're in Pearisburg. You said that you're staying at the Angel's Rest. Where's that?
Yeah, Angel's Rest. Hiker Hostel. I think this is their third year.
Right.
I heard good things about it, and it's if you remember, remember where the Mexican restaurant or the Food Lion is in Pearisburg?
I do, very much so. Very early on, right near the Dairy Queen.
Exactly. Well, if you're at the Dairy Queen and you're looking at the Food Lion strip mall, mm-hmm. Angel's Rest is right behind that. And you literally walk behind the strip mall, and there's a little path right from the back of the strip mall to Angel's Rest. So
Is it nice?
It makes it really convenient for people. Really like it for resupply because the food line is right there.
Cool. Yeah, I tell you what, you've also got there, and I've been meaning to ask you about this for some time. Have you discovered the joys of the all-you-can-eat Chinese restaurant, or have hikers put that one out of business? Because that was actually in that strip mall as well.
You're absolutely right, and it shows up in AWOL that way. And I'm a big fan of Chinese food, actually. But I haven't gotten too much into these all-you-can-eat buffets because I think I'm eating better, but I'm not ravenous.
Wow.
But not to be too critical of Chinese restaurants that I didn't go to. Both locals and others said to stay clear, that maybe it wasn't the best place on the trail. So,
all right. Well, by the time I got there,
to the Mexican restaurant.
That was good. That was good. They're really cheap beers there. I seem to remember as well. So that was pretty cool. So now I remember. I know what's happened this year. I know that when I hiked out of Pearisburg, there's a long winding trek partway up the mountain, then back down again, and there was rerouting when I was actually on it. So I was actually going over they were going to close the area I was hiking over the following day. Have you heard about any rerouting up Peters Mountain?
No, they must have finished that because we were just chatting about.
I'm sure, yeah.
I'll be hiking up tomorrow, and it looks like a relatively straightforward, modest climb up to the ridge, and then more ridge walking tomorrow.
Oh, I tell you what, that ridge walk. I know. I was looking at the map. I have the map open when I'm talking to you. You've got a beautiful ridge now for about 12 miles, and it's absolutely glorious up there. And I think you're gonna thoroughly enjoy that. And looking back, you've had some nice walking as well, haven't you? Not terribly onerous.
Yeah, I think that's probably for the listeners. I've talked to a number of hikers the last few days, basically from Marion, Virginia to Pearisburg so far, which is, depending on your speed, 4 or 5 days, has to be the easiest topography that we've had to manage the whole trip. It's a tremendous amount of ridge walking, and even ridge walking, as you know, can sort of roll up and roll down. And Damascus is a good example. Well, it looks flat, but you actually do have a fair bit of rolling up and rolling down until you get to the last few miles into Damascus. But this ridge walking the last 3 or 4 days has had a remarkable amount of pretty flat, easy going. So people who really want to put in miles could have done that in this last stretch. So
what have you done then? Last couple of days?
Easy stretch.
What sort of miles have you done? Have you done any big miles?
No, my back was bothering me again, and I've been trying hard to manage aches and pains early and not let them get worse. So I did. When I came out of Marion, I had full 5 days of food, and it just was an odd feeling. Like my pack weighs more. It felt like it weighed more than any time the whole trip. Yeah. I was having trouble getting comfortable with the pack, and I've been doing this for 50 days. Why all of a sudden do I have these discomfort? So I did a 6.5 mile day after celebrating in Atkins, sort of the quarter way, and actually stayed at the quarter way in just to kind of take a day. And then I did a 20-mile slack pack, which was my way of keeping the miles going, but also giving my back a rest. Yeah. And then I did a 15-mile day, and then I did a short day 8 into Trent's Grocery and went to Woods Hole and rested. Had a great half a day at Woods Hole.
Yeah, tell us about Woods Hole. I saw a post on Facebook. Tell us about Woods Hole, because I never stayed there myself, and I wish I had.
Yeah, I'm probably the biggest fan there is of Woods Hole. Of course, I'm a history buff, and Woods Hole started many years ago by the current owner's grandmother, and served hikers for many, many years when through hiking was not that popular. And there's an old 19th century home there, and they've added to it. They've got great bunk room. They got rooms in the main house. It sits on an organic farm. The view of the mountains and the meadow is beautiful. But it's also one of the cleanest, organized place. Neville, who runs it, is just delightful. She's a certified massage therapist. I took advantage of that while I was there. They have organic meals at night where everyone eats together and helps prepare it together. They offer breakfast in the morning. Everything, there was great. It's just a wonderful, relaxed feeling, but it's just this great sort of historic farm that you get to spend a day or two
Nice,
at.
nice.
So
Sounds
it's
a little
just,
bit like Elmer's. Sounds a little bit like Elmer's, where you all eat
it's
together
a
the
little,
lovely, lovely food.
yeah, it's like Elmer's in that it's great history and the
Yeah.
social and the meal together. Um, but it's also different. But it is, I would put it in the category of Elmer's as a very must stop for everybody on the trail. And a number of people who I've told this to were really sorry they missed it now that I explained it to them.
Yeah.
And just a couple nights ago when I was there, this couple I'd hiked with for a couple days from Canada, they had walked right by it, and the guy's wife said, I really wanted to stop there, and they were literally on the bridge in Pearisburg,
Yeah.
and he goes, okay, well, let's go back there, and they showed up, they got a shuttle
cool.
back, they had dinner with us, they spent the night, and they said they're so glad they came back. I don't get any endorsement money. I just tell you it's a
Yeah,
great.
we should have asked for that.
And I will, yeah, I will say what I did, and I really encourage others who are thinking about the totality of the AT experience is, again, my preparation, I think, worked into this, which was I had done enough reading and studying that there were certain places that I knew were historic or iconic.
Sure.
And I planned around them. Like, one of the reasons
Nice.
people miss Woods Hole is it's only 11 miles from Pearisburg. And people who are doing a lot of miles are like, well, I don't want to stop at Woods Hole and then only have 11-mile day. But a lot of people stop in Pearisburg because it's a logical and useful resupply place. So some people are racing by Woods Hole because they think they're going to lose out on a half a day, as opposed to gaining this unique experience for a half a day or a day.
Yeah, cool.
So I actually planned my trip saying, and when I was working through the miles, I could see exactly that dilemma. But what I did was I said, look, it's high priority. I'm staying here and I'll work out things around it, as opposed to I will go there if it's convenient. So I did that with Elmer's.
I was about to say, did you do that generally up the trail? Did you pick out places you wanted to be and then work your way around getting there?
Yes, not too many, but the ones that I had read about that were special, I did that with, absolutely. And I'm really glad I did. Because, a day here, a day there really doesn't matter. And I think when you go to Elmer's, when you go to Woods Hole, and you say, so many people before me have done these things and they're unique experiences, I think it's going to be one of those things that you look back on, and you're not going to remember the 12 extra miles you did because you didn't go to Woods Hole. You're going to remember, Neville, and your experience at Woods Hole with other hikers and the meals and the historic farmhouse.
Yeah. By the way, Woods Hole, if you're listening, just think about that. That's fantastic advertising for it. I really enjoyed that. One last thing. And it came up because what you said just now, you've done 45, 50, whatever it is, 60 days. I can't remember how many days you've done now. You've done all these days, and suddenly you notice a pain in your back. Don't you find, and it just struck a bell with me, because I seem to remember there were days I'd get up, I didn't appear to have done anything different to other days, but I think you find your body so much more sensitive than it is in normal everyday life, don't you? And you notice these slight changes.
Yeah, I think that's true. Yesterday, all of a sudden the bottom of my right foot gave me a little pain, and then you start going, oh no, what did I do? And fortunately that went away relatively quickly. But I know what you mean. And I don't know where this sort of discomfort in my back came from, because I say to myself, I've been doing this for so long. Why didn't it, manifest itself in a more quiet, gradual way? But I do think the little half a day at Woods Hole, taking a slack pack day, and now I've got a 0 today here. I think my back's pretty good, because I did, carry my pack into Pearisburg yesterday doing 11, and it felt really good. So again, I just think that the rest is the smart way to deal with these things before they get out of control.
Absolutely. I quite agree. Well, look, I'm glad, but as always, I'm glad you're sounding good. You're staying in Pearisburg for the rest of the day, heading out again tomorrow. Have a great day off and rest up and enjoy yourself. and I'll catch up with you next week.
Okay, great. Always enjoy it, Steve. You take care.
Cheers, mate. Bye.
Bye-bye.
So we now know that Unica or Unaka is really Unica. I won't be making that mistake again. And I was a little disappointed that Bruce isn't embracing the concept of the all-you-can-eat restaurant. It was one of the best things to find on the trail for me. I may have looked as if I was starving like a supermodel, yet eating plate after plate of noodles, rice, beef, pork and prawns. I loved it. When I mentioned that my diners said that Bruce sounded so chirpy these days, she wasn't the only one to have noticed. I get regular emails about this change in him and the way that he's embracing the challenge of the trail. As he said himself, he seemed to have developed a confidence in his ability to do this, and that is a wonderful realisation to get. His mood reflects it. I thought that was the end of our conversation, but we often continue to talk after we say goodbye for the recording, and there was one more thing I wanted to know. I mentioned his winter supplement earlier, and Pearisburg is normally the place to dispense with your winter gear. Of course, Bruce had his own plans about that. There was one more thing I wanted to ask, and that was, Pearisburg is traditionally the place you send home your winter stuff. How have you done any of that, or have you kept hold of it just in case it comes back again? Because you've been so surprised by the weather, haven't you?
Yeah, a good question as always. Part of it, I was planning to send things home in Marion, and my meetup with one of my friends had to get changed because of my own schedule, that I wasn't able to meet him when I thought we could. Right. But like you say, I'm kind of glad that we've deferred it a little bit because, 2 nights ago we had, another day in the 20s. I was at Jenny's Knob overnight, and it was right at freezing. So haven't been sorry. As you know, we had a little snow just a few days ago, and having those rain pants on those brutal days is just kind of a safety item.
Sure.
So I have the luxury of a week from today being in Roanoke, Virginia, which is right near McAfee's Knob and the home place, and awesome. We've got 2 of my good buddies and their wives and Cheryl coming out to Roanoke to have dinner, spend a day hiking, and so Cheryl is bringing a bunch of things to me in Roanoke, and I will be sending some things back with her. And I do think I'm going to be able to cut 3 or 4 pounds with sending some of these things home. So, I think, by deferring the return of items for a couple of weeks, it'll work out well. I won't be too surprised. The other benefit I have is from Roanoke to Waynesboro, as you know, I'm getting closer and closer to Richmond, where my home, of course. Yes. So if I make a mistake, it won't be too hard to correct it. For instance, there's a buddy of mine who one time wanted to do the whole trail with me, and he's going to do Waynesboro to Harper's Ferry. So there's going to be a few opportunities for me to correct the mistake if I send something home I shouldn't have sent home.
So there you have it. Bruce's logistics are working out so much in his favour. Now, we already have a wonderful sponsor for the shows in Trailtopia, but Bruce was having a real shout out for Woods Hole Hostel, wasn't he? I wonder if there's something he hasn't told me. To remove any doubt, that was his completely unsolicited opinion. He clearly loved it and wanted you all and the following hikers to know. Bruce and I will see you next week.